Started. It's 1 minute after the top of the hour, so we are very prompt today. So I am Julia Ryman, and this is Emily Conway, and our podcast is Threshold, where we talk about living in the in-between spaces with intention and awareness. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself and your Substack?
Sure, I can do that. I'm Emily. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I write a Thin Space newsletter on Substack, which is personal essays about living with intention and awareness.
Yeah, and my name's Julia Rymett. I have a Substack called Embodied Living, and it's about living an embodied life. And today we are going to turn our attention towards the coming 6 to 8 weeks, the holidays. And, at this point of the year, especially if you're in the US and you have Thanksgiving, it is one thing after another after another. And it's a time of year which is often a mixed bag for people. And I was thinking about that. I think there's a really dear yearning to have a kind of experience that we imagine with the holidays, and the experience we do have doesn't always match up, right? And then on top of that, we live in an environment that really creates an image of what this experience should be. So in the Northern Hemisphere, right, we get colder weather and we want to have an experience near the fire, feeling cozy, wearing sweaters with our loved ones around and a hot mug of tea. And like all of these pieces create this desire for this experience. And, in reality, it can be fraught, right? Everything from being really, really busy to having a lot of tension in the relationships that we have. So today we're going to be working with our feelings towards the holidays as they are. And before I go any further into what we're doing today, I want to stop and say hi to all the people who've joined us. And once again, really encourage people to put comments that occur to you to write comments for us, because we love having a conversation with people. Once in a while, people email us and we really enjoy chatting with people through email. So I just wanted to put that little plug. Before we go on, Emily, is there anything you wanted to add?
Not at the moment. I think you've done a good job, and we can head into the holidays here. And
Okay. So when we think about preparing for the holidays, there's different ways that we sort of look forward to that. Often, typically, we think about preparing for the holidays on a kind of personality level. And that is like managing our relationships. And so we'll think about who did what to us and who said what and who is hurtful and who is fun and who is difficult and who is awkward. And then we think of all of our ways of managing that. And that is sensible and useful and a good thing to do. Today, we're going to look at something in a more energetic way on how to prepare for the holidays in a way separate from our kind of personality level experience of the holidays. And we're going to start with a little practice. And if you have the ability, it's nice to be able to sit for a moment and be still with us. But if you're busy doing something, feel free to keep doing it and just kind of have your mind focused on what we're doing. So if you're doing the dishes, you can keep doing the dishes and just kind of listen in and do the practice as you're doing your normal daily life. So you're going to start, whatever you are, wherever you are, you're going to start in a position that is alert but relaxed. So if you're standing, for example, if you're doing the dishes, you're going to stand in a way that's alert but relaxed. If you're seated, same thing. And just take a moment and tune into your body. and just feel what's going on with you today. In particular, you're going to notice the sensations in your body. We're going to be using the sensations as a guide. And now you're going to bring to mind some aspect of the holidays that you have really positive feelings toward. Something about the coming holidays that you really enjoy, that brings you happiness. And you're going to imagine that part of the holidays in some detail. What are you doing? Who are you with? What are you wearing? And then as you imagine that, notice your sensations. How does your body feel as you imagine this joyful activity? And then whatever those sensations are, you're going to put a little space around them. That's a little vague. You can do that in whatever way, whatever that means to you. But feeling those sensations in a broad field, a spacious field. And then you're going to imagine some part of the holidays that you have neutral feelings to. You don't love it, you don't hate it, you're just neutral. It's part of the holidays. And imagine this neutral aspect in detail. What are you doing? Who are you with? And then notice your sensations to a neutral thing. And put space around them. And now you're going to imagine something you have negative feelings towards. And I wouldn't recommend you pick your worst, most awful thing. Pick something that you don't enjoy, not the worst thing. And imagine it in some detail, the thing you don't enjoy, the thing that makes you uncomfortable, it's challenging. And notice your sensations. And then put a little space around them. And then you can bring yourself back into your life. You can open your eyes if your eyes were closed. We're going to reflect on that, the different sensations between a positive, neutral, and negative experience, and what it means to be a little spacious around them, to have those sensations, to have that experience in a way that's not tight, but in a way that's more spacious.
Mhm.
So before we go further, Emily, what did you notice when you did that? And please, everyone, put your comments in the chat. We want to hear.
Yes, we do. I certainly noticed different, feelings, bodily sensations around the 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 positive aspects of the holidays, the neutral and the kind of yucky ones. Um, and I was thinking as I was sort of being with this idea of creating like this space around them, it felt almost like a buffer or something. Um, like there was just this edge space that was kind of um taking some of the stronger aspects, of my feelings, so that then they didn't bleed all over the place. Like, yeah, I could see them as contained, but not in like a not like in a yucky way. Um, but just sort of more like held. And just the aspect of between shifting between what was positive, neutral, negative, I think really helped me to get that distance, that you're talking about, that space where it's like, oh, this is what's happening here. Okay. This is what's happening here. Okay. Okay. Um, and I have a practice of that, we call that, some people call it the watcher or the witness or that separate space where you see what's happening and you notice, but you're not drowning in it. Um, and now, of course, I'm wondering how that will show up when I'm in the holidays, when all my kids are home and it's real crazy and busy and there's lots of fun stuff happening, but there's also a lot of mess and the dishes are going crazy in the sink and um yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to translate
Mm.
my into my experience. It's just that the practice itself has made me more aware that I can step back and look. So I guess those are my initial thoughts. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
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 Anyway, I
Yeah.
I
For, well,
yeah.
is
No,
there a comment?
I was just going to say I'd be interested to see what other people thought. Um anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it was interesting. As I was practicing this in when I thought of a negative thing, there's all the experience of negativity,
Mm,
which has tight quality to me.
mm,
And putting space around it allowed that experience to bounce around without hitting an edge. So
mhm,
I think it's a little related to what you're saying of being held, right? But for me, it was the bumping up against the edge when I held things tight that really made it uncomfortable. And when I put a little space around it, things were able to move in a more open way. And then it was almost more tolerable. But what was interesting is when I did that with the positive experience, my inclination was to want to hold it tight because then I could feel it, right? And being spacious around a positive way allowed it to move around in this more open way, which of course in my brain thinks is a good thing. But I really wanted to cling to the good, right? My inclination was not wanting to be spacious, not wanting to allow, because then I wasn't hanging on to the good quite as tight, right?
yeah.
So it was really interesting to me because in my experience with this, I almost learned more about my reaction to positivity and that I really want, for those of you who don't follow along, right? I love winter. I love winter and all the things, right? And I could feel myself hanging on to all the things I love. And there was a tightness,
Mhm,
right? So it was very interesting.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to say because we got one comment here. Steve says that's the hard part, being aware of the emotions while living them and trying to define them and putting them in a space.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's just when I'm in the midst of something, good, bad, or otherwise, um, remembering that I can step back and look at it. That it doesn't have to be always, I mean, sometimes it is. Whatever it is, it's overwhelming, you get lost in it, whatever. But it's that remembering, the practice of remembering that it's there and then allowing it to be in some way. And that's what I think Julia said. What Julia, you said was so interesting about the way that you realize the stuff wants to show up, you know, or yeah, because for me, the positivity part, positive stuff's hard. Like I don't think about positive stuff. So I should say it is a practice for me to think about positive things. And that has been and will continue to be a lifelong practice. So when I had space to think about positive things, it was like, oh, okay, now I can do it. Now I can think about it. So I wasn't holding as much as I was like, okay, let's do it. We've got the opportunity. Let's do it. But yeah, Steve, I get I get the difficulty of being aware, I think. Becky's also said something. I think you're onto something, Julia. It can be difficult to allow our goodness without holding on. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Enough said. Mic drop.
Silence. Yes. That's, you got it. Don't we all just want to hang on to that because we're so frightened it's going to go. And it does go. Jacqueline says the unenjoyable aspect brought up tightness and contraction. Creating space brought up sadness and passion for this negative aspect, which is a person, by the way. So I will be able to be compassionate in the moment, or so will I be able to be compassionate in the moment? That is the $64 question. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about here. Julia, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, so I want to kind of, so you've mentioned the idea of the watcher and being aware, and Steve put the idea of being aware of emotions, and a little bit it's in Jacqueline's response as well. Will I be able to be compassionate? Kind of implied in that question is that there's an I sort of trying to be compassion.
Mm.
And so I'm circling back to the idea of being spacious, right? I think it's really important and it's useful to have moments when we are aware of our emotions in a way separate from our emotions. I think that's a really important thing.
Mm.
But what I'm wondering is when you put space around them, can you be in them and be them without that little bit of separation between the watcher and the watched, right? So I think it's really important, especially in tense family. And I say family because it's often family, but it doesn't have to be moments where watching your emotions, being aware of your emotions is a really important distance. And that can be a really, really useful tool. But then there's other moments where maybe if we can sort of be in them, be in that space with the emotion so that we're not watching so much as being what's happening, that allows us to be present in the moment and more open in the moment and possibly allow a different kind of connection to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm sort of offering this out as something to consider, right? So if I'm with someone where there's a little bit of tension, there might be moments where it's important for me to watch my reaction in order to navigate the situation. And there might be moments where the more present I can be with whatever's happening, that there's kind of an heart opening that happens where I can be with the situation, not so much managing it as being with it. And when they feel that presence, maybe there's new possibilities. I don't know, right? And the problem is we're talking so high level. There's a million different circumstances, but I just want to suggest that that might be one way to bring spaciousness into these challenging situations.
Steve says yes. I love that you brought that up, because, and I'm also wondering about how that works in positive circumstances, or works differently. I don't know, in positive and negative circumstances. And also that's a high level thing. And again, we're talking about different people and different circumstances. And Jacqueline says, so I think what you're talking about is more embodiment. Yeah, I like that word. As you were talking, I was thinking about being in situations where where I am sort of sliding back and forth. It's like between being in it, and then realizing I'm in it, and being in it, and realizing I'm in it. And I think that, at least for right now, today, is more my experience than anything else. And when I think about positive experiences, I tend to have a practice of wanting to be with more. Partly because I have a hard time with positive experiences. So I want to practice being in it and letting it be, and letting the edges blur, and just letting it be there and not holding it like we were talking about earlier. The circumstances that are more negative, I tend to want to slide back more into the kind of noticing. Part of that, I think, is because the negative circumstances sometimes feel like threats. So I want to pull back, you know? But also, I just need wisdom. Like, I need the wise Emily in those circumstances. But I also need to feel them. And I don't want to replace this supposed wise Emily with a person who's like, no, I just don't want to feel. I want to just watch what's going on down here. So again, I think it's that sliding in and out for me, is how I experience what you're talking about. And I love that, because it's such an interesting thing to mess with and watch, and be with. Like he says, creating space from the heart automatically includes the element of compassion for yourself and for whatever else is going on. Yeah. Julia, got thoughts?
It's occurring to me, I've had enough emotionally difficult experiences in my life that in a way it creates a certain courage or bravery, because at some point, if you've been through enough difficult things, it's going to be hard to feel like it can get any worse. That's being a little extreme, and whatever. Take that with a grain of salt. But what I've found is, because of this, there's a courage to be vulnerable. So you get a kind of discernment between what are circumstances that really are risky and do require certain steps to be taken to protect yourself, right? There's certain people where you really have to draw lines and you have to be careful about, right? But in the vast majority of things, the most that can happen is that I feel maybe awkward or hurt or upset.
Mm.
And I've been awkward and hurt and upset enough that I know I'm going to survive. So with this comes a kind of courage to be, and in particular with the people I want to build connections with, even if it's difficult, right? So that I can be more open and present. And if they do something hurtful or if they do something, whatever, mean or awkward, I know it's not gonna, it's gonna make me feel crummy and then I'll get over it. So their stakes become radically lower, right? Because of that. So one thought that just occurred to me is that after a certain amount of life experience, you have the courage to be able to be open and stay open and vulnerable because you know the worst that's going to happen is you're going to feel crummy and then you're going to move on, right? The other thing is you start to see, so you mentioned this earlier, the difference between positive experiences and negative. In some ways, I start to, the division between the two or the labeling positive or negative starts to blur, right? Everything has aspects of positive and negative, right? So even when I am taken down and feel crummy or awkward or someone was mean to me, then I can see within that is something that is positive. And by the same token, maybe something's positive. And so it becomes this blend that no longer can be divided easily into positive or negative. And and I'm talking a little theoretical and it makes me sound like I know more than I do. So I really don't, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression here because, but, you know, it does, I think, to use your word, I've lived enough of a mess in my life that at some point the mess is helpful. Like it's really taught me a lot to be such a mess. And so that helps me navigate these situations and find that wise Julia that you're talking about, the wise Emily, and be able to be open and vulnerable.
Yeah. Julia, I just love that. And that doesn't sound like you're up on a platform that somewhere. It sounds like you're human, you know? It's very human. Yeah, I've got my own version of, and everybody here does, I'm sure, um, of junk. And you've lived through enough of it, and it's hard and it's messy. Um, and you know you're gonna make it, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the blending of experience. You cannot say this is all good, this is all bad, you know? And in the noticing of that, I think is so powerful. As we talk about as we talk about being with. We've
Yeah.
got comments, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
have
Well, we can grab the comments here.
okay. Um, let's see. I know I wanna know I'm gonna try to figure out where they started. Okay, here we go. Steve says, I agree with Jacqueline and Becky. Compassion allows space and time to reflect on positive and negative. The question comes up, is it possible to lean into the positive? My own rhetorical personal question. I have trouble leaning into the positive. Steve, yes. And then Becky says, oh, Steve, yes. That's practice for me. And then Jacqueline says, exactly where I was starting to go, Julia. These labels are interesting in and of themselves. Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, we've got lots of wise people here today who have lived all their messes and are showing up and sharing their experiences with us. And we just really appreciate you guys. And thank you. Julia, do you have anything else to say before I do the outro?
No, I just really love people's comments. It's so fabulous. And I want to thank everyone for for helping add to the discussion because I think it just makes it richer. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I second and third that. So for the next week, we're going to talk about being with the natural world and how we do that, what that feels like, our experiences of that. But we're also going to start, that's the first in a 3-part loosely defined series, where we're going to talk first 1 week about the natural world, the next week about creating sacred spaces, and then the third week about ritual and the importance of ritual. So we're sort of loosely defining, or I'm loosely defining this series as inhabiting or creating containers, sacred containers for us to be in. And of course, nature is created already. We just want to inhabit it and pay attention to how we inhabit it. So we're looking forward to those the next 3 Mondays. And next Monday, which is the week of Thanksgiving, we'll be talking about being with the natural world. And thank you all again for being here. Just very, very grateful for you. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.